we know Alito is essentially a Fox host on the court.
New developments about Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's compromised ethics and open support and comfort with extreme far-right causes.
The Supreme Court at the moment is so biased and so pro-theocracy, as you saw in what we just watched, that somebody has to expose them because they are running around arrogant, and they have the whole GOP on their side, and we're losing the Supreme Court's objectivity, and somebody needs to expose them. And they have no consequences whatsoever, these people. They're there for the rest of their lives.
Why can't we sue them in a class action suit? Why can't
I'm not sure you can even do that. They're the highest court.
Yeah, but I don't know why. Listen, I don't know why you can't pull a class action suit that says, listen, you are no longer doing the job you're supposed to be doing. I don't understand why we can't do that.
The question is, does Roberts have the bazoos? It's a word I learned somewhere, I don't know. But we all know what it is.
All right, guys. So once again, we got to talk about the attack on the Supreme Court. And I think that this is probably one of the most important issues that conservative media is not covering enough, because Democrats are letting us know that if they win the House and the Senate in the presidency, that they are going to try to destroy the Supreme Court. Okay, they are trying to remove conservative Supreme Court justices, or they're going to try to pack the court. Either way, they basically want to get rid of the court as we know it, because the court is probably the last major institution standing between them and complete fascism and authoritarian takeover of this country, right? So they're going after the Supreme Court in full force, along with the mainstream liberal media, because the mainstream liberal media is an arm of the Democrat Party. And despite how much I think that everybody should be concerned about the Democrats and their attempt to try to force Supreme Court justices off of the court, more specifically, they're really trying to force Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito off of the court, or to recuse themselves from the Trump cases. It's actually pretty hilarious to watch them attempt to do so, right? The mental gymnastics, the ass pulls that they're coming up with in order to try to get rid of Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, to pressure them to recuse themselves, because they have nothing, right? They quite literally have nothing, okay? We've already talked about the fake flag scandal that the mainstream liberal media was so upset about, where Samuel Alito's wife flew an American flag upside down. And the mainstream liberal media made this huge deal about it. Oh, Samuel Alito supports January 6th, right? Because he flew an American flag, or his wife more specifically, flew an American flag upside down outside of their house like 2 weeks after January 6th. Again, there's no reason to believe it's connected to January 6th at all, but that's what the mainstream liberal media said, okay? It's funny to me, okay? They were upset because his wife also flew the Appeal to Heaven flag outside their beach house or something. Apparently, that's a right-wing symbol, even though San Francisco, the city, has been flying that flag. BLM has flew that flag. I mean, that flag has been flown by various groups across the political spectrum. But again, if you're on the right and you fly that flag, apparently that means you are a far-right extremist. In this story, this fake scandal, apparently believing in God, right, as a Supreme Court justice, also makes you a far-right extremist, according to the media, because Samuel Alito got caught on tape, okay, secretly recorded audio by some left-wing lunatic that was going undercover and recording conversations with Supreme Court justices while they were out at some event. And they caught Samuel Alito saying things that the mainstream liberal media is now saying is proof and evidence that Samuel Alito is biased, right? He's in the bag for Trump, okay, and that he is an extremist, okay? And I want you guys to listen to this audio courtesy of Joy Reid's show, and you guys can be the judge in regards to whether or not this sounds like right-wing extremism. Take a look.
As a Catholic and as someone who really cherishes my faith, I don't know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that needs to happen for the polarization to end. I think that it's a matter of winning.
I think you're probably right. I think one side or the other is going to win. I don't know I mean, there can be a way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. Really can't be compromised. So it's not like we're going to split the difference.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that the solution really is like winning the moral argument. Like, people in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that, to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
And just to underscore how unusual that kind of response is from a Supreme Court justice, here is Chief Justice John Roberts after being asked a similar question by Ms. Windsor.
You don't think there's like a role for the court in like guiding us toward a more moral path?
No, I think the role for the court is deciding the cases. If I start, would you want me to be in charge of guiding us toward a more moral path? That's for the people we elect. That's not for lawyers.
Well, I guess I believe that the founders who are godly, like, we're Christians. And I think that we live in a Christian nation and that our Supreme Court should be guiding us in that path.
Yeah, I don't know that we live in a Christian nation. I know a lot of Jewish and Muslim friends who would say maybe not. And it's not our job to do that. It's our job to decide the cases as best we can.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's just me, but it seems like these mainstream liberal media propagandists, they need to seriously work on their listening comprehension skills, okay? Especially Joy Reid, who seems to have the worst listening comprehension skills ever. Either that or she's just a liar, probably both, because the line of questioning to Justice Roberts versus Justice Alito was completely different, okay? Justice Roberts was asked specifically about the role of the court, right? Specifically about the role of the court, right? The role of the Supreme Court, or what should the Supreme Court do, was actually mentioned in the question, okay? That was not how the question was presented to Justice Alito, okay? Justice Alito was simply asked a question about his opinions in regards to the general polarization in this country, okay? And this woman was having what seemed to be a casual conversation, even though she was an undercover troll, right? But he wasn't asked specifically about the role of the Supreme Court and what the Supreme Court should do, okay? She kind of came at him as some type of activist, and, I think that she was kind of asking, hey, as an activist, what should we do? More specifically, she said, as a Catholic, okay? So that was the framing of the question. Now, again, that framing was different than what was asked of Justice Roberts or what was asked of Justice Alito just last year, because they compared his answer this year to last year, and then they tried to say, oh, well, there's a stark difference. He's changed. And it's like, no. If you listen to the audio tape from last year, she framed the question from the standpoint of what should the courts do about polarization.
John, very nice meeting you. Nice meeting you. You take care of it.
I do want to ask I want to be totally appropriate with, the jurisprudence of it all, but, just to be totally candid, like, how do we get America back to a place of really less polarization? Because I feel like the court is undergoing this period of turmoil. Like, people don't trust in, I think, just this was the last bastion of, I think, public trust. And how do we get back to that?
I wish I knew. I don't know. It's easy to blame the media, but I do blame them, because they do nothing but criticize us. And so they have really eroded trust in the court. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, ordinary people, ordinary isn't the right word. American citizens in general need to work on this to try to heal this polarization, because it's very dangerous. I do believe it's very dangerous.
Yeah, so anybody with any decent listening comprehension skills can see the difference between those two questions, in the sense that in 2023, he was asked this question specifically from the perspective of what should the courts do? Okay. And that's how Samuel Alito answered the question, right? From the perspective of the court. Okay. However, in 2024, he was asked that question from the perspective of, well, what should we as Catholics do? Okay. Which, again, is a completely different answer. He's not talking about it from the perspective of the court. I mean, really, he's not talking about all that much at all. He's really just saying, okay, well, yeah, as a Catholic, if you feel this way, yeah, I think I agree with you on some things. And that's basically it, a complete nothing burger. But according to the mainstream liberal media, a Supreme Court justice openly believing in God is a bad thing, and that means he's far right and tyrannical.
Something else has happened. I mean, he's completely radicalized. He's not stupid, so that's not the right theory. He's an intelligent man who's so deep in a view that even in right-left politics, traditionally, it isn't represented on the main stage or the spectrum. I mean, just talk about his articulation of godliness.
I mean, in some sense, look, godliness, the sort of comment to Lauren Windsor is a sort of reflection of much larger themes that are not surprises to us. You can't read the Dobbs opinion and not know how he thinks about godliness. You can't read the text of the speech he gave in Rome right after Dobbs and not know how he thinks about godliness. And lest there were any remaining doubt, the flag, the Appeal to Heaven flag that flew for months at his beach house suggests exactly how he feels about godliness. So, you know, props to Lauren Windsor for getting it in his own mouth, but none of this is a surprise. And I just want to note, we have 2 major abortion cases that are pending that will come down in the next 3 weeks, in which at least one person has very, very, very strong feelings about godliness that will inflect on how that case gets decided.
Yeah. So again, apparently a Supreme Court justice openly believing in God is a bad thing, right? It's a terrible thing. That means he is radicalized and not on the traditional left-right spectrum, according to MSNBC. Do you guys see the desperation here? Okay, the mainstream liberal media, every chance they get, they just make it known. Like, yeah, we're in the bag for Democrats, right? Democrats say jump, we say how high. We don't care how stupid it is. We don't care how much it destroys our credibility. We don't care. We just want Democrats to win. This is why we will peddle any of the bullshit that they put out there for us to peddle to our followers and viewers who we believe are extremely stupid, right? Because you have to be an extremely stupid person to think that this is some type of scandal. Just like you had to be an extremely stupid person to believe that what Byron Donald said was somehow saying that Jim Crow was good for black families, right? Again, you just have to be really dumb to believe that. But again, because they believe that you're really dumb, okay, this is what they tell their viewers on a nightly basis to justify trying to overthrow our republic, because that is what the attack on the Supreme Court is about, and that is what Democrats are currently trying to do. They're trying to use this bullshit in order to go out the conservative justices. And again, this is something to really pay attention to, because this is all the more reason why we have to get out and to vote against these people. Because again, the plan from these people when it comes to the Supreme Court is much worse than anything these people fearmonger about when it comes to Project 2025 or all the stuff they say Trump is going to do. That, again, Trump is not going to do a vast majority of those things that they claim he's going to do. But Democrats, though, I have no doubt in my mind, if they had the power, they most certainly would definitely destroy the Supreme Court.
So we are faced with an increasingly urgent question. What can be done about this out-of-control court? Well, today, Democrats in the House Oversight Committee held a roundtable on the ethical crisis in the Supreme Court. I should note that one of the expert legal witnesses there was my wife, Kate Shaw.
Listen to this framing, bruh. Out-of-control Supreme Court. Out of control? What about the Supreme Court is out of control? Why? Because they make decisions that you don't agree with? That's why they're out of control? Huh. There's an ethical crisis on the Supreme Court. Flying a flag upside down is an ethical crisis? Oh, some Supreme Court justices receiving a gift, which happens to liberal and conservative justices. But again, they never complain about the liberal justices receiving a gift, like Ketanji Brown Jackson receiving gifts from Beyonce. Oh, well, we don't have a problem with that, right? But let Clarence Thomas receive a gift, though. Oh, he must recuse himself. He must be kicked off the court. Yeah, you got a problem with Supreme Court justices receiving gifts and financial benefits, but yet you don't have a problem with Nancy Pelosi, who has gotten rich in Congress from insider trading. When's the last time MSNBC covered Nancy Pelosi and all the money she makes off of insider trading in Congress? The fact that Congress can't even regulate themselves when it comes to their own ethics, but yet you want to regulate the Supreme Court? Again, you got to regulate yourself first. Oh, you want term limits on the Supreme Court? What about term limits on Congress members first, right? We need term limits on you guys first, okay? Regulate yourself first before you decide to step outside of your wheelhouse to try to put somebody else in their place.
Leading that panel was Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, and New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the vice-ranking member, and they both join me now. It's good to have you on.
Thanks for having us.
Congressman, I'll start with you just about what the agenda was today to convene this. Obviously, you can't call hearings yourself as a ranking member and not the chair, but what were you trying to do today?
Well, the oversight Democrats wanted to respond to the national clamor over this crisis of legitimacy at the Supreme Court. And so
there's no national clamor over the crisis of legitimacy for the Supreme. Like that, there's none of that. Nobody is upset about the Supreme Court except the liberal media, right? Nobody is upset about the Supreme Court right now. OK,
we analyzed the ethics crisis. We analyzed the political crisis around confirmations that got us into this and the blockaded confirmations of people like Merrick Garland, who was nominated by President Obama to the court. And then we began to talk about what sorts of things could be done, both in the specific case of Justices Alito and Thomas, and then generally about the ethical collapse at the Supreme Court. It's the highest court in the land with the lowest ethical standards. These are the only governmental officials in the land who are not governed by a binding ethics code. There's no process by which we can hold any of them accountable. And so it violates the essential principle that James Madison identified as the heart of our justice system, which is that no man can be a judge in his own cause. So we began to, explore different avenues of holding them accountable.
Now, notice how these same people told us for 2 weeks straight that, no, you can't question a judge. You can't undermine the judicial system by questioning it when you don't like the outcome. But look at what these clowns are doing right now. These clowns are spending time undermining the highest court in the land after telling us, oh, this judge right here, this little state judge, no, you can't question him because he's a Democrat, right? You can't say that the trial wasn't fair or that it was rigged. But yet these people are telling you straight up, the Supreme Court is rigged. There's an ethical crisis. These people are biased. This is what they're saying. And it's just hilarious because they're only complaining about the conservative judges, the ones they disagree with. But again, you have Sonia Sotomayor, who's a liberal judge. She comes out and says, oh yeah, I cry when I don't get my way. Is that not a revelation of bias? Like, clearly you're biased, right? I mean, when you come out and say you cry when the Supreme Court issues a conservative opinion, you're telling the world that, hey, I'm a liberal, right? And this is how I'm going to rule on certain issues. Oh, well, they're not complaining about that, right? They don't have anything to say about that because they're totally fine with Supreme Court judges being openly liberal. But they don't like when Supreme Court justices are openly conservative, though. They hate that. Can't stand it.
Yeah, Congresswoman, you said something towards the end of the hearing, just saying that it just cannot be the case as sort of a constitutional matter, as an almost intuitive common sense matter, that they are not subject to any checks, right? We have three co-equal branches. There's checks and balances that move between the three directions. And the position which Justice Alito has actually taken on the record, he actually said in a Wall Street Journal interview that Congress has no ability to regulate us whatsoever. What should Congress be doing? What are you brainstorming, basically? Like, what's the conversation about what those checks can be?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, Justice Alito's position is laughable in this idea that he can be, that the court should be accountable to nobody, and that the only person that they should be accountable to are themselves. This kind of Scout's promise sort of set up for how we should be having ethics standards for the highest and most consequential court in the land. It is completely unacceptable. And not only is it unacceptable, but to have any one of our co-equal branches be completely unaccountable to the others is paving the path to authoritarianism, tyranny, the abuse of power in the United States. And it is structurally completely unsustainable. And so it is not a question of if Congress has jurisdiction and power over the Supreme Court. It is what power are we going to exercise in order to rein in a fundamentally unaccountable and rogue court.
AKA a court that, hey, we disagree with, right? We don't like their political opinions, so we're going to stage these hit jobs that really are nothing burgers against them to justify overthrowing the highest court in the land, because that's ultimately what they want to do, okay? And that's the whole point of this video. This idea that there are no checks and balances on the Supreme Court is just silly, because the way our government is set up is that the executive branch nominates a judge to the court, okay? And the legislative branch can control whether or not that nominee goes through, okay? Or they also have the power to impeach a judge as well too. But there's nothing there that they can actually really impeach Samuel Alito or Clarence Thomas for, right? There's nothing that they can be impeached for. And this is why they're upset. This is why they're trying to have some oversight, some BS, again, just a way to try to smear these Supreme Court judges and to make the case, right? To make a case that, oh, they should be impeached or they should be removed. This is what they're moving towards, because they know as of right now, if they was to try to impeach a Supreme Court justice, it ain't going nowhere. And they also would get massive backlash from it, from the American people, because it's silly, right? You're impeaching them over nothing. It's literally politics, okay? They're the ones playing political games, not the Supreme Court. So again, I want you guys to pay attention. This is an important thing. This is the reason why we have to get out here and vote against these radical Democrats, because their plans for the Supreme Court are as radical as it gets. And they openly tell you this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to destroy the Supreme Court. So again, it's not just about the president, okay? It's not just about the House or the Senate. It's also about the Supreme Court, because as you guys have seen, the Supreme Court and the federal courts really have played a very, very, very significant role in protecting our republic, especially when it comes to these political persecutions against Trump, okay? If the Supreme Court was an overwhelmingly liberal court, I highly doubt that Trump will be able to even run for president. I also think that a lot of these trials, like the Jack Smith trial with January 6th, he'd already be doing that. In fact, it would probably be going on right now at this moment, okay? If the Supreme Court was liberal, there are a lot of things that would be different about this country that would be a lot worse if the Supreme Court was overwhelmingly liberal, which is what these people want. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.